Rotimi Ojo is a DEI recruitment thought leader who coaches talent acquisition professionals on the importance of partnering with external talent networks to access diverse talent. He is well versed in creative sourcing strategies and support high growth technology companies win the war for talent with employer brand marketing and dynamic employee community frameworks which drive retention. His work experience spans an exciting array of industries including professional sports, banking, and most recently technology, having worked at companies like DocuSign and IBM. His storytelling is engaging and sure to inspire this audience with actionable next steps, particularly around the exciting use cases of AI and other HR technology to drive recruiters' efficiency. Please help me to welcome Rotimi Ojo. Let me start with you, Rotimi Ojo. You heard about the report, and how 18 years above employees were not interested in taking that test or report, giving their feedback. What is your opinion? Could we say that the younger generation aren't interested or they do not like to be bothered?
I think there's a more interesting conversation to be had around the impact of the research and the data points that have been uncovered. So for example, if I were a Gen Z employee that were a part of this organization completing this research, I would be more curious about what the next steps being action from the research were. So for example, how are we going to increase our employee experience programming in a way that supports Gen Z talent? How are we going to increase community leadership frameworks internally, which Gen Z talents are able to contribute to? So I do not feel as though the data points from the research suggest that Gen Z might be disinterested. I think it, however, is more important that there is a clear pathway to clear actionable next steps from the data and an understanding of how that impacts the employee experience for Gen Z talent.
Right, thank you. Yeah, so still talking about, the Gen Z, I like to just, float on that before we get into the real core of the conversation, because you have a lot of young people from that age upward, maybe 26, a lot of them are in the workforce. And we have that miscommunication. Where do you think that is always coming from? Is it that culture shock for the older generation, the way we perceive discipline and responsibility? Where is that coming from?
I think there's two key considerations as a part of that conversation. One is impact, and the second is transparency. So for example, while I was a recruiter on DocuSign's team, there was a board that included talent acquisition managers, included recruiters, and included individual contributor sales folks. The key mandate of this board was to redefine our candidate engagement strategy. So for example, we noticed that within the sales talent pipeline, there was minimal representation of women. Well, as a recruitment team, we then need to think about how we are driving our recruitment initiatives to attract women. So for example, our recruitment events would then focus on highlighting prominent women leaders within the organization, highlighting progression opportunities specific to women, highlighting some of the employee benefits that ease the concerns that expecting mothers, for example, might have when entering the workforce. So in terms of communication, I think there is a need for the communication to shift to more value-based orientation, because that is what Gen Z talent is looking for. And so the cookie-cutter approach, which has typically been taken in the past, in which a recruitment event is highlighting the benefits of your organization, how long you've been around, why you're the best organization to join, there's so many more dynamic work models that are emerging. For example, the freelance economy is huge right now. So a key consideration for Gen Z talent might be, why would I want to join your organization? Sure, there's a stability of a salary that I might receive, but the reality is Gen Z talent is now able to build a business model, build a personal brand that attracts them opportunities that well exceed what they might be offered within traditional employment modules. And I think that is why organizations and corporations today are struggling to attract Gen Z talent, because the value proposition for these individuals is still very unclear.
To know that the concept of toxic workplace, psychological safety, is a new thing that we have to deal with very carefully.
The world is starting to understand how well-being is connected to the bottom line, how well-being is connected to the company's performance, how it's connected to your own personal performance, and the importance of it. And personal development has to go beyond learning work skills and learning and shift to learning personal skills, like empathy, like self-awareness, like gratitude, like a strong work ethic, and communication, conflict resolution. These are all things that I think individuals need to develop themselves in, but I think organizations as well need to encourage. And just like my colleague here pointed out, solutions. We've identified the problems, we've identified these issues. What are the solutions? What practices are being put in place in the workspace? How many organizations have robust wellness programs in operation, as opposed to just wellness strategies?
There's a couple of key considerations around the conversation that's been had already. So a couple of things. One, I don't think the conversation is about happiness in the workplace. The conversation is around how we unleash maximum productivity of our employees. Right? And so what are the intrinsic motivators that would make employees show up better at work? That is when we're having conversations around what the workplace environment looks like. So that's one. The second is also about likability. Yes, likability is important because managers, senior leadership, people want to work with people that they like, but it's not really about likability. It's about your ability to build relationships while you're at work. And the importance of how establishing a brand within your organization increases your suitability for progression opportunities. And so if you want to become promoted by your manager, you need to understand how to build effective relationships with them. And it doesn't matter whether they like you or not. If you are delivering the most value to your employer, it is going to be recognized. And so the third element, which all of this conversation boils down to, is business productivity, because you mentioned as well, there is a contract that has been signed with employees in which they are being paid and then they're expected to do the job. That is where I think there is a misunderstanding around key considerations that Gen Z talent take into account when working for their organizations. So for example, sure, maybe I'm earning 100,000 to 200,000 naira a month. Maybe for me as an individual that is about to have a family, as an individual that might be going through grief, the conversation isn't around, oh, I've received this amount of income, so I'm going to be able to come to work and deliver what is expected. The conversation is around the workplace being a hub for productivity, in which there are expectations around the work that you're doing. How can employers introduce more effective support systems? So it's not about whether you're happy at work, but that you are better able to manage your personal challenges with the expectations that are had of you at work. Right? And so I wanted to reframe a couple of those things around happiness, likability, and business productivity, because at the end of the day, it's a contract that is being signed, and it's an expectation for work to be completed that at the end of the day, your personal situation does not trump your ethic at work. And so now, going to the question that you asked around communication strategies, it needs to be very clear from a Gen Z perspective that all of this is being taken into account. So for example, is there, and I had a lovely chat with Lara before coming here, where we're chatting about employee assistance programs. And so, as an as a future potential employee of your organization, if I go through a really experiencing challenge in my family in which I experience the death of a loved one, am I going to be laid off in 2 weeks, or are there support systems within the organization that would support me better contribute to the workplace while I'm managing my grief? As a woman who is about to enter the workforce, and I know that I would like to build a family in the next year, in the next 2 years, is my job going to be secure as I'm going through that personal change, or are we going to be more concerned about the fact that I'm going to have to take maternity leave?
Rotimi, let me come right there.
Please do.
Supposed to be leading a team, to sign a contract, or I'm supposed to develop a project, a code that is going to make this organization to thrive. The older generation know the rules. You know that you put aside some of your issues and get focused. Maybe I'm too harsh. But you know, the younger generation just believes, you know what, I'm going to bring all of the issues right in my face, and it's going to affect the workplace. So should the employer be so, you know, picky as to, today are you feeling well, tomorrow are you okay, you know, and then if you're not okay, just go home? So should we be deducting from how many days you didn't show up and all of that?
And so, for example, this might be a lesson for second line managers. If you have an individual on your team who has experienced grief, experienced a breakup, whatever the case may be, all right, what are the projects that you are currently working on, and what is your capacity currently? If we have a due date of this Friday, are there colleagues that we can introduce into this project to support you? Do we need to push back the deadline for this project to a week out? And so I think we'd be operating and communicating on an extreme if we say that employers are responsible for the personal well-being of employees, because at the end of the day, they're not. Right? But employers are responsible to ensure that if they are not looking to fire an individual, which is totally within their right to do so, how are you going to contribute to the retention of this employee by creating conditions in which they're still able to thrive? Right? And then we're discussing, again, relationship management at work. But it's about the fact that you have expectations to your employer, which you must meet. And as a management team, we are going to work with our employee so that they are still able to deliver on their responsibilities, but they also have an additional element of support because there's transparency around what they are going through and the level of support that is required. And then now, if this is a 3-6 month long process in which they're like, I'm unwell, I can't come to work, then we'd be discussing performance improvement plans. Then we'd be discussing other opportunities, i.e. puts into another business unit of the organization. But let's not forget that business productivity is the key driving factor of employers, right?
Right. Thank you very much. You know, what are those prevalent challenges that Gen Zs, you know, face in the workplace, and how, as HR employers, how do we solve those potential challenges? Yeah.
For the sake of simplicity, as we wrap up this conversation, we were talking about work from home, right? So a way that employers might be able to support their employees is simply having stretches that you can do at your work desk as you're working from home. So while I worked at IBM, and I love that you brought up the idea of an intranet, on this intranet there would be recommendations for work chairs that we should get, which are more comfortable. There were recommendations to have height adjustable standing desks. There will be recommendations for stretches that you can do. So I think the conversations that we're having, yes, there are Gen Z individuals that might likely attempt to abuse the flexibility that is being introduced into the workplace, but I think the accommodations that are required to drive employee success can be as simple as, all right, if 50% of our workforce is working remotely, can we support them stand up every 2 hours? Can we introduce mindfulness programming into our workforce that supports them? Can we introduce access to therapy? So I think the accommodations are really simple, and I think the pushback is really because at the end of the day, in the next 15 to 20 years, the majority of the demographic of the workforce is going to be Gen Z talent. And so I don't think the conversation we're having is about whether or not it is important to make these accommodations, but the conversation is around if you want your organization to still exist in 10, 15, 20 years, you are required to make these changes, or else you will have high attrition, low retention, low employee success, no innovation, and then the conversations we're having now around the cost that comes with employees working from home is going to be a much larger cost in the future.
Have we done justice? Have we done justice? Okay, so our speakers are going to take a bow, and then you are going to appreciate all of them for this great opportunity. Thank you very much. I will be calling on, Coach Lara.
Thank you very much for all the insights you shared, Rotimi Ojo, and we appreciate you for coming to this event. Congratulations.
On behalf of the Board of Trustees of HR Jam, on behalf of the management team of HR Jam, we want to thank every one of you for taking out time out of your busy schedule to come here to celebrate today's Workers' Day. We appreciate you, we see you, we celebrate you, and we are grateful that you made it here today. Thank you very much.
It's time to take that ownership of your well-being. So let's go outside to have a great session.
Shake, shake, baby, shake. I feel your vibration. Fine girl on motion. Beautiful temptation. Hot girl on rotation. Shake, 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 baby, shake. Electricity. Vibes on the frequency, yeah, till infinity. Steady on a different beat. Love is very sweet, but first you must get the moolah. Na poverty, now you make it my worry. Nobody go sign. And you know everything I do is nobody else concerned. She go come online,